Hey everybody, welcome back to the weekly Unreal Engine Twitch live stream. I'm here today with Mike Fricker, Technical Director, and Founder and CEO Tim Sweeney.
Hey.
So, as you probably saw in the headline for Twitch, and our forum announced that we've got some big VR news today. It's just really something awesome for the VR development community, something that we've been super excited about for a little bit of time now, and we're ready to share it with the world. So. We're going to skip the news and community spotlight this time. This is kind of super important.
Keep it action-packed.
Yeah, super
straight
important.
to it.
We got a lot of cool stuff in store for you today. So, I don't know, Tim, why don't you take us through what we're going to get our eyes on today?
Sure, we're here to see the Unreal Editor running in VR. This is powered by the Oculus Touch and HTC Vive motion controllers, which enable you to be completely immersed in a 3D environment and then to reach out, grab, and manipulate the world, interact with the user interface, and experience the next generation of editing. Now, this isn't some limited set of tweaking tools here. It is the Unreal Editor, the same tool that's used by indies all the way up to AAA game developers, and it's running in VR. Thanks to the work of Mike Fricker.
Pet project.
Pet project.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I mean, how and why? How did this come to be?
Years ago, I think when we first got the first Oculus DK1, we got the game running in it, and we're just like, when are we going to get the editor running in this thing? And I think we always talk about what's the next generation of world building, level editing, what's the next big quantum leap? And that's kind of when we got the DK1, we're just like, okay, let's get some UI drawing, let's get to see what happens here. We realized really quickly, input was kind of the limiting factor in the DK1 days. You could get it in there and you could use mouse and keyboard to see it, but it just wasn't enough. So with the Vive, we worked with the Vive and that touch controllers for a while now, and that was the key, right? That's what made everything click. And
opened everything up.
Yeah, and I mean, so there's some interesting challenges that we'll talk about later about how to deal with movement and input and making that fun and precise. But I think the best thing to do is probably just go ahead and show you guys. So we have senior designer Nick Donaldson here.
Everyone's favorite Nick.
He's suited up and ready to go.
I know you're watching.
People like this Nick better than Whiting. He's our favorite Nick. Sorry, Nick.
He's the best Nick. So
yes.
we'll just let Nick kind of take you guys for a little tour about kind of how this works.
So as you can see, I'm in this digital world. This is virtual reality as you know it. If you've used motion controls before, you can see my controls here. You can see a couple of our little functions that we have on the controller. You can see everything's kind of one-to-one scale that I like and that I want to do. But what if I want to move? What if I want to edit the world and interact with it? So I can actually kind of grab the world and move it to where I want.
You're moving the whole world, everything in the level editor.
And it kind of feels like our world, I'm standing in the same place and the world is sliding around underneath me, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I liked about that too. You were mentioning earlier that kind of helps a lot of the simulation sickness with locomotion specifically, right?
Yeah.
It feels
critical.
I'm super sensitive
natural
to this kind of thing, and we kind of went to great lengths to make sure it didn't feel like you were sliding around the world willy-nilly, and that it's actually the world that's moving, not you. So you can see that the scale of these benches and chairs here are actually really small. So one pretty cool thing that I can do is actually kind of pinch and zoom just like an iPad. And now the world is this big. Now the world is that big. So, this is, for me, it feels like I could sit on this bench here. So we can kind of do the opposite as well. We can pinch and zoom this whole world down. And grab here. We can just kind of keep going until we have what feels like a tabletop game. This between these two towers here is about 2 feet, one arm's width. So I can kind of slide the whole world around really easily. I can throw it along, catch it, kind of rotate the whole thing. And it's actually quite compelling and really, once you get the hang of it, really easy to start moving around the world and interacting with it.
It's really cool. You can actually, I feel like I can move around. I can navigate much faster using this type of interface than I ever could with the mouse keyboard and traditional CAD style, Maya style controls.
Yeah.
It's really, really natural. And I think it's important to mention too, as Nick's scaling the world and making himself as small as a mouse and as as tall as Godzilla.
Yeah.
The sensation you get in stereo with the headset on, with immersion, is quite, like, you can't represent it on,
My favorite.
on the screen, but it's amazing.
My favorite is to scale the world down like this and then just kind of stomp through like Godzilla.
Yeah.
You can see my movement through there feels, you know.
It's almost like entertainment within itself, designing, right? Like
Yeah.
there's so much you can do.
So we can actually kind of open up the content browser here. And it's just the one that we know and love.
Yeah, it's just the real editor UI.
Yeah.
That's the really crazy innovation here. You can actually bring up complex parts of the UI as if you're holding a little iPad in your hand. And then you can manipulate the iPad with a laser pointer as if it's in the real world. And using that paradigm, we can over time extend it to the entire editor user interface.
Yeah.
Any part of it can now be exposed within VR in a Minority Report sort of way.
That's our expectation, is we want the whole editor to be available in VR. You might not need every little dark corner of the editor day to day, but there's no reason why you shouldn't have access to it while you're in there. We want everything available to you.
Like any good level designer, I steal as many things as possible.
Alt drag.
And just kind of place them in, exactly. Alt drag. Our alt button in this case is this little modifier key at the top of the controller.
So, Nick, maybe you can explain the transform gizmo you're using.
Yeah, so right now it's this behemoth of a multi-transform, but it has, the reason we did it this way for now is that it has kind of everything that you would want in one place. You know, there's locked to one axis like this. There's these kind of scale, drag scale. I would love to bring this back to our editor reel because bounding box based scaling is awesome. Just makes it so easy to scale something like that. So we can kind of drag this world around here. Little modifier key drag. Duplicate. Do the same thing this way. We have kind of corner based rotation. We can actually turn, if you want precision or if you don't want precision, you can have, you can spin it around that way. You can turn on rotate snap. You can have memorized. So if you hold down on here, you can actually kind of use undo, delete. A couple of really common things here. And if you just remember where they are, you can just kind of remember where they are and kind of, repeat them.
So that alignment and snapping functionality is key to building precise,
Absolutely.
production quality environments, as opposed to just being a toy. You can create and align objects arbitrarily, just as you can with the mouse.
Yep.
If you tell a level designer they can't snap something, they're going to destroy you. So it's a really important thing.
Yeah, it was critical that you can do real work in here, right? So we focused on precision. There's a lot of snapping assist. We tried to make snapping a little more fun. When we first implemented it, it would pop around quite a bit, just like any snap in any software. And we're like, it doesn't feel right in VR because things can kind of like vanish in front of you and it just doesn't feel right when you're immersed. So we put nice transitions on everything, and you can see like Nick's using throwing gestures now and then.
Just how it snaps a little bit like this.
Yeah.
If I let go halfway, it'll snap back a little bit.
Yep. Can I actually see you? Can I see you inside that sphere? I think I can.
You can see my hands.
Just the hands.
It's a little creepy. So we can do things. We can bring up the content browser again. So this is one of the real advantages of being in virtual reality, is that we have the ability to actually really understand the scale. Let me turn snapping up here. Content browser off. Oops. Snap. Okay. I can bring myself back to a real lifelike scale. And rotate the sucker around. You actually grab it with two hands as well and do like a free transform.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting way to manipulate something, right? It's probably the most natural movement feature we have.
Well, and that's something you had mentioned to me earlier too. Was like the whole, you already know how to do all this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you get in and it's not like you have to learn. You have to kind of know where the buttons are and where to find specific things, but you want to move that thing over there, you just grab it and you put it there. It's like moving a glass across a table. Right?
It was amazing. Mark Rain came to the office yesterday. He hadn't tried this before. And I'll give him credit, this is partially his idea originally back in like 2013. He really wanted us to try making a VR editor. And he came in and he just picked it up and he just got it right away. He's like, oh, so this is how I move the world. Oh, this is how I scale myself. It's like an iPad.
Yeah, even a marketing executive can make a level.
Well, I wasn't expecting that, right? I mean, we are building this for level designers and serious development, but it actually improves approachability.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what gives it kind of the magical feeling like the iPad. Your brain already knows how this thing works because you've been doing it all of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to unlearn or relearn things. It's like if you're a level designer and you have specific ways about handling design or approaching a specific challenge, you can still apply all of that here. Just the interface, the way that you interact with it, comes down to something that's more natural to you than a flat screen with flat input, right? You're kind of having to move around in.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's totally the opposite of CAD software, where you have to learn a huge set of keyboard shortcuts and special mouse movements, and try to map 2D mouse input into a 3D environment.
One of my favorite aspects is when you bring it back to the real world scale. You make sure everything's sitting right. You just look around the scene and see what feels good and what doesn't, you know?
Yeah.
Those benches feel like they're a little bit...
And this is one of the critical...
Normally we would have to test in VR and then go back to the editor, then test in
Exactly.
VR and go back to the editor.
Put the head on, take the head off, put the head on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really messes with your hair, you know?
And we saw this, like during Bullet Train development, Jerome and Nick and other guys who worked on the project constantly have to go into VR, make sure that they set the metrics are all correct on the objects and they look convincing. It's an interesting thing about VR games. It's not like photorealism isn't enough to make you feel immersed.
It's not.
Like it needs to have the right metrics that you would see in the real world. Otherwise, your brain's just like this is not real because things aren't the right size.
Yeah, and it's always the case. I've played so many VR experiences where that's the thing. It's like, why am I so tiny? I've built them before. It's exactly the same thing. One thing, Mike, you were talking about earlier as well was the fact that we have like the head tracking, the translational tracking. So Nick can actually walk around and look around something without having to move himself into space, right? Like, if you're navigating in the traditional viewport with WASD and the mouse, you can kind of go around something to make your edit, and then we'll move back this way. Whereas this is just like
You just peek
move
over
and you grab the thing you need, and you make that adjustment right there on the fly.
It's quite interesting. Like you can actually reach under something and select it. Like it doesn't even have to be in plain sight. You can like blind fire behind you and interact with things if you needed to.
Grab something and throw it.
It's often easier to work with things, especially at your hand height in kind of a trained model scale, and then you scale yourself back up to real and you look, that feels pretty good up there. I feel a little bit jammed in with just a visual prototype, but then I can pinch the zoom back down to my hand scale,
That
kind of
zooming will make
multi-select these, and delete. And
That makes it really ergonomic because right now you're moving around a lot in the real world. This is almost room scale VR as you're currently doing it. But you could also sit down at your in your chair and then be working on the level shrunk down as if it's a little architectural model.
I mean, you can move all the way across this environment by scaling it down. Just a little bit of flick of the wrist.
Yep.
And back to here.
I'm seeing some questions come across the chat, so I want to go ahead and just confirm. Like, this is the editor. This is not an EXE that's bumped out of the editor. This is actual Unreal Engine running. Like, they hit the play button and now they're inside.
So there's a new toolbar button on the editor toolbar that launches you into VR mode. It toggles instantly. You can go back and forth between 2D normal style editing and this seamlessly. It's even faster than playing VR to go back and forth.
The lights are probably my favorite thing in here, just pulling them out and placing
And here's the
exactly
details
where
panel.
you want them to be.
Here's the light. Here's the details panel. I could scrub that temperature value.
You're changing the color. Oh yeah, temperature.
From a warm light to a cool light.
So we were surprised this is kind of a cool thing, right? When we got the UIs in here, we were like, is this gonna work? I'm not sure. And we have some work to do to make it even more usable, but surprisingly, like a lot of our editor UI, once we applied DPI scaling to it, just make everything kind of uniformly bigger. It's usable. It's quite usable. You can get to we want you to be able to get to everything.
Oh yeah, and so one of the other things we didn't talk about before is that instead of, if you don't want to have to grab and slide the whole world around all the time, you can also just kind of point and teleport over.
Yeah, it's Bullet Train basically.
Exactly.
It's Link Snap.
So now we have this absolutely massive robot in front of me, so I can just kind of pinch and zoom him down so he's now a toy in front of me. I can grab his arms and rotate them. This, and turn off rotation snap, just like that. We can even select all of this stuff.
And you can kind of arbitrarily rotate with two collections, two grabs to your back.
Exactly.
Even if you don't want to work on a specific point, you can just grab however you like.
Delete those guys.
I think that's a big thing too, like, because as a level designer, as you're space barring through the different widgets, and then like rotate this way a little bit, that way a little bit, this way a little bit, that way a little bit. This will actually let you take it, slide it right into the socket you want it to be in.
Yeah.
Just
I think it's really fun
this guy.
rotating with, or basically it's simultaneous move, translate, rotate, scale, freeform. But it's great because it's one-to-one the whole time. Like your hands stay exactly where you picked up the object on it. And once you get the hang of it, it's just really fun for freeform transformation. I think it's going to be great for animation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's going to be really cool. Imagine posing a character like this.
Imagine this in a hierarchy. Just set up a bit of an IK so you can grab the hand there and just.
Yeah.
Right now it's not set up that way. It's just using the.
Someone could probably
typical
even
rotates.
use this to like build multiple skeletals, extend it to have like socket,
Right, yeah.
snapping, right? Like so, if you have a modular robot actually that you've built out as a multiple skeletal meshes that run animations, you could throw them in here and actually snap the pieces together like a Lego set.
Yep, just throw them together.
Yeah,
Dancing robot.
it's so much fun. Cool. So what else you got for us, Nick? Are you gonna poke around on the robot a little bit more?
Well, that's about it.
All right, great.
Take a little break.
So,
Take a break.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We'll get you out of the headset. Tim,
He's a simulation lightweight.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, the audience knows for the most part there, but yeah, that's great. Sorry, Nick. Tim, any closing thoughts? Where do you see this going? What are the next steps you think for VR editing in general?
Well, I think this is the start of a real revolution. And over the next decade, every 3D tool and application is going to move into VR. And they're going to be far more natural and intuitive to use like this. After using this, it's really a pain to go back to the mouse even.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't, the final thing. This is just the start of a journey. We have some of the key pieces of the engine up and running now, and we'll rapidly get other parts of it, the editor, implemented in VR over time. And we're using this to build stuff ourselves, so you can expect it to evolve rapidly. But just the feeling of it all is pretty wild. I actually have dreams about this, and in these dreams, it's not like me sitting at a computer doing something. I am in VR. I am in that world, and when you actually take the headset off, it's kind of disappointing actually to be back in the real world where you can't manipulate things all that easily. Yeah. So it's going to be a very exciting time for VR, and every generation as the hardware improves, this is going to get dramatically better to the point where this is going to be the future way of building everything.
Yeah, one thing that's undeniable is when you're in VR and you're being creative in VR, it's like where's a better creative space? Being immersed inside the world that you're creating, or sitting at a desk in front of a mouse and keyboard, clicking.
And at the same time, but you can say that not just the environment, but the capabilities that the technology allows us to do. I mean, like the possibilities are endless, right?
Yep.
Like, I mean, as things grow out, creativity just goes wide forever.
Oh gosh, yeah. There's so many ideas. There's so many things. Just wait, it's gonna be awesome. And like this is kind of one of the cool. Like we're really excited about getting it out there, so that you guys can try stuff out too. We're gonna build this so it's extensible, and VR is still really early, and especially motion controls and all the possible interactions. Like we can't wait to see we think we have a few cool ideas here, but like people are gonna come up with such amazing stuff with this.
Oh yeah,
it's gonna be awesome.
It's insane. I mean, and it's kind of a funny irony that up till now we've been actually building VR content sitting in front of a mouse, keyboard, and monitor. Having used this now, it feels like Henry Ford riding his horse to work to design a car.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, same way we've always done everything with the Unreal Engine. We plan on releasing this thing just as is.
Source code
available, updates available moving forward as the VR landscape evolves over the next infinity. It'll be one of those things that helps us drive with this tool. So the community, we want that same feedback. We want y'all to be just as involved as we are in this. I mean, this is a tool that's for VR development, right? And speaking of that, what can we expect next as far as information about it?
So at GDC, we'll be showing a lot more and announcing a release date on March 16th.
Awesome.
So stay tuned.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Tim. Thanks for hanging out with us. Nick's going to join us here for a bit.
Coming out now.
See ya. All you.
I'm unplugging from you. Didn't realize where I was.
Nick's actually left the room in the headset. He's now down the hall. No, I'm just kidding.
So I think we wanted to talk a bit about how this, maybe go into a little more detail about how.
Yeah.
I have VR face.
Yeah, it's a good face though.
Yeah, it's a good face.
I suppose.
I've seen better.
I was born with it.
Yeah. Maybe it's Maybelline. Anyway, so yeah, let's back in the history. You mentioned Mark earlier, right? Like that was kind of the thing so long ago, and
well, like I said, we've always discussed, kind of what's the next big step you could do with world creation, right? Mm-hmm. We always have ideas like we want to do procedural stuff. We want to do more touchy-feely kind of build the world from scratch tools. That's totally something we're going to get to someday.
Yeah.
But this was something as soon as we got the HMD, we're like, will this work? Can you get the editor into here? Will we be able to read the text?
Right.
Back in the DK1 days, you kind of couldn't.
No,
it was,
no
it was
way.
kind of crispy, and it's like, but the hardware improved like crazy so fast. So, but yeah, so that was like back in late 2013 when we started. I just started like hacking in some stuff to get the editor, just kind of drawing stuff in there, and we didn't get too fancy. But then over the last year or so, that's when this was really maybe like a year, a little more than a year.
And we got our touch controllers and the Vive.
Yep, we did
And
some experimentation on like some Hydras back before we got touch controllers. Even we were messing around.
We just, as everybody else, was trying to solve that problem right at the same time, right? Like, how does this actually work with a tool?
I had the Kinect on my desk at one point.
Yeah,
the Leap, we tried everything.
Sixth Sense.
STEM,
Yeah.
STEM prototype. Yeah.
And then so Ryan and I had a couple of weeks before.
This is Ryan Brooks.
Ryan Brooks, yeah. The crazy man you've all known to grow and
Yes.
love. Know and love on the stream here.
Yes.
The Mind.
Trying to get them back soon.
Yeah.
That's
So putting together some prototypes for what it might feel like to do editing in VR. So I guess for about 2 weeks or so, I spent trying to figure out the world, moving and stuff like that.
Because it was key, right? Like moving around in VR is a little bit of an unsolved problem, right?
Yeah. There are approaches to it at this point too, right? Like, and the motion controllers have certainly put everybody substantially forward. Oh, thanks, Shelly. I was like, what's on the screen? But now I see it. Got it. Nailed it. Yeah. Apologize. But yeah, it's still one of those things as we talk about, like, being Oculus Connect really showed like that, like really tight community all trying to solve these amazing problems. And we think that this tool can, really be something that evolves with them as those problems are solved. Like, it's what we do in Engines. We were really diving heavily into VR. So.
Yep. Definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, those guys built a pretty cool prototype.
Mm-hmm. Ryan did some experiments with
UI,
what it's like to have to kind of build like some interfaces,
gizmos, and
gizmos, moving things.
Yeah, there's still some ideas there that we still need to incorporate.
Yeah,
that didn't quite make it out from the prototypes.
Mm-hmm. We're trying to think of more intuitive movement widgets on how to, it's a little bit cluttered right now with all of the different functions you could do on an object. There's it requires a little too much fine-grained finessing to pick all those things, but it's a really good start.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad we built a new transform gizmo. The old one just wasn't going to work in there, not the way that it was.
Yeah. So this is the evolution of that work in progress, and kind of where our snapshot is today, and diving further into it in the future. And I just can't wait to see how it evolves. Just like everybody, just like Engines, just like as we move piece by piece, this is something that we'll definitely see updates to.
It moves so quickly. I think I was away for a couple of days, and when I got back, a whole bunch of widget stuff had changed. I was like, oh, this is all new. What's going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like it's the actual editor, right? Like for level designers, I mean, like that's the big thing for me. I've spent I can't countless hours like UDK and UV4 just like placing objects and like getting them just right, and then going back and checking them, and then like changing the camera speed to then zoom all the way up to where I'm supposed to be, and then change it right down because I'm trying to get into those details. Or the scaling, I mean, when you first showed me the scaling, it's like, oh, well, that changes everything, right? Like, I just go this and then zoom back into the one little thing I want, and I'm there. I'm actually in that space.
And it works well. It complements the teleporting feature because sometimes you don't want to have to zoom out.
You want a small adjustment or or you want to teleport.
And also,
when Nick told me at some point, like, yeah, you don't get sick when you teleport in VR. And I was like, do you just fade out and fade back in a new place? He's like, no, you just zoom, just go.
Yeah.
I'm like, that doesn't make you throw up or anything?
Yeah. It's really weird. I'm usually super sensitive.
You probably thought that wouldn't work either.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. All the different interactions we've had that kind of battle test against simulation sickness, which is pretty easy because you tell us right away. He knows right away.
When in doubt, put it on Nick's face.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we were doing some of this, before the pre today, he's just like, nope. But yeah, it's always funny every time we talk with Nick about VR, and it's like you're that best test case for if we're gonna make somebody sick. So
it's a love-hate thing. I really wish I wasn't nauseated half the time, but it's definitely helps.
But from that exact standpoint, though, that actual grid, your actual space really helps. It changes everything.
It grounds you.
Yeah. Even if everything around you is moving, you have that. That's your. And it's noticing when that thing moves. Even watching that makes me feel uneasy. Right.
Yeah.
They've seen everything else stay, but so it's something the mind says. This grid is truth. Yeah. Everything else is false. Right.
Yeah. It makes it feel like an object, just a really big object that's you're moving around.
Yeah. And Yeah, it's another thing too that's kind of neat is the approachability of editing in VR. There's going to be a lot of people that you open up Unreal Engine or any complex tool and there's just menus everywhere. Kind of know where to find specific things. Simplifying the UI to something that people can find really easily, move around like doing natural motions. I can see people that wouldn't necessarily even attempt to do something like this. Actually give it a shot because you've got the hardware, you can be able to just hop in and make those edits and like, oh, I built something already. I've got some meshes, I just stacked them out and I built that arch, like you're throwing the scale of one thing, it's like now we have a ceiling on our building, you know what I mean? And it's just underneath it.
I have to say, it's once you get in there, sometimes you don't want to come out, and it's the best like fort building simulator.
Yeah.
Like it's really fun to build things like around you, and there's other games like the creative games that are we're replacing blocks and whatnot, but it's pretty cool when you have like actual meshes and you're dealing with real high quality props, and you're able to throw things and construct things all around you.
Suddenly, it brings it to life in a way that hasn't really been true before.
Yeah. It's really great. We were testing, just watching you go pillar, wall, pillar, ceiling. You're like, I know it's way too stretched or anything. It's like, but this is kind of what this thing to feel like. It also be a prototyping tool, right? Like even if you don't have the actual solid meshes, you can kind of gray box with this as well.
We keep having these conversations about so editor in VR. People go, oh, do you really need that? We're like, all right, where's the value in this? Yep. Where are we going to find the value? And I think maybe once or twice a week we keep having this discussion, like thinking about wouldn't it be cool if you, Mike? Where's the value? It's like, Nick, where's the value in that? And so finding where that value is for a user, it's not just, oh, wouldn't it be cool if? It's like, hey, where do we actually, why is this important to do in VR? And so we started on the easier aspects there, being in the area, placing down objects became really valuable very quickly.
Yep.
Scaling, moving, all of that kind of stuff is hugely valuable. And then kind of we're going to keep digging down the rabbit hole on things that are pretty cool,
Yep, we are.
Yeah.
I think like we have fun. There's more to it than we showed, and like we have other like you could place materials and but I think like every time we add a feature, we never get it right quite the first time. Like we've had to. It's tricky. The motion control stuff is interesting because there's a lot of nuances to it, and you implement it and you kind of see how it is, and like we just recently got I think a uniform scale with a gizmo handle, right? And we were trying it out, and I'm just like, oh, like already we can see like next time we do this is going to be like awesome.
Yeah, about 10 minutes before the stream, we're like, can we just make the scaling on the uniform scale like 4 times faster? Yes, we can. So.
Yeah, just do it. It's not quite 1-to-1 yet, right? Yeah. You want it more 1-to-1, like everything else. That's where we found it's very successful when we get the interactions correct. Is when it feels like something that would happen in real life. I'm picking something up and moving it over here. Like I know it's going to work because I know exactly. It just works every time.
And then there are some paradigms that your brain has never dropped before.
Oh,
like when you pinch and zoom and scale the world, like you'll know what that feels like when you do this. You've got contact points and everything stays relative to that. But when you pinch and zoom, if someone does that on an object and it stays where their hands are, but gets really, really big, people go, oh, that's fine, that feels good. But one thing your brain has never had to do before is experience the whole world expanding and then having no reference point towards that whatsoever. And so you can grab the world and scale it all really big, and then you can try and move, and you're like, wait, I'm small. I'm small.
You're the size of a flying mouse. You're
your
like
brain's
a mouse.
just like,
yeah.
That's great.
So,
there's interesting challenges.
Yeah.
I think like another thing that people, you hit it on the head, or people actually have never experienced this sensation outside of VR. It's not possible to experience the world suddenly shrinking down or growing around you. Like
I'd even say you pull, you can stretch this phone that way, but you can't stretch this phone all 3 directions. Just by pulling, right? Like and so
when you first prototyped it and we were trying it out, we were both thinking like as we were trying it, we're like, is this really unhealthy what we're doing right now? Because like
my prototype at the time was it backed out all of the transforms of the camera, and so the world was scaling around the center of your eyes, in between your eyes.
That was really weird because it looked like nothing was moving.
And then about 2 seconds later, you would go, oh, it's really big, and the only thing that changed, I guess, was the shifting of the distance between your eyes. And I had this thought, which was, I may be one of the first people in the world to have experienced this. I don't like it.
Not sure if safe or not.
Yeah.
But now we've done it a million times, so it's just part of the normal controls. It's
Cool.
fun.
But yeah, scaling just from your eyes still isn't a good thing. There's no good reference to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's grab a couple questions and then we can wrap a bit early. But yeah, so we got one. When is this available? I'm just going to go ahead and Tim mentioned that we'll have more information March 16th at GDC. We'll be talking a lot more about it, so stay tuned for that. This one's kind of an interesting one. I think we've talked about this before, but does this work with all the major HMDs, or is it like, since we kind of have that platform agnostic approach to VR, right? Like, you could do this with.
We're gonna focus on the HMDs with motion controllers right now. That's
Yeah.
what we're testing on, the Oculus Touch and the HTC Vive. But there's no reason that you couldn't use like pop into VR editor even with a mouse and keyboard.
It's definitely not what it's being designed for at the moment.
No.
It's not the experience. I mean, that's not going to be too different than just going to play test mode or whatever.
It's the same as Tim mentioning earlier that these touch controllers have actually broken that door open for us to actually let you get in and get your hands dirty, if you will, right? Like.
But we have in the past, like I said, before we even had touch controllers, we had prototypes where we were using Hydras or just other. It really is designed for motion controllers. I don't see us spending a lot of time putting like a virtual cursor in there where you're clicking around like you would in 2D. Just pop up like. I mean, that's kind of not the point.
Got it.
Like we really believe in the motion control, and motion controls are going to get way better, right? This is just the first generation of them, really, maybe second generation.
I mean, we can still technically, you can click in the viewport and you can fly around.
Yeah.
So that's totally possible.
That was another question too. Is like, do I have to use like the
if you just want to see
scaling
things,
and grabbing?
If you just want to see things, you can kind of pop it on your head and do the VR button, and you can see the sense of scale, and you can just kind of place your camera down. And that, I mean, that's still an advantage over having to do the preview in VR, which would play the game, spawn you at the place you wanted to be spawned at, but the game was running and you couldn't do anything.
Yeah, you're in the game at that point.
So there's still an advantage to being able to just like test it on, look around, fly to a different spot, look around, and that's still valuable if you don't have motion controllers.
Can you do it if you have motion controllers, but still use WASD, like to move or keyboard? Yeah, I didn't think it overrode. It was not exclusive.
WASD still works. Yep. It's if you do have like a Vive hooked up or something, it might not be the experience you want, because what it's doing is it's moving the origin of your tracking space and rotating the origin of your tracking space, right? So
I wonder if we should do something about that.
Yeah, well, we can have a mode to support seated with.
If
I'm
you're
just
in
going to
VR
pop in and
mode
use the
and
mouse
you're
and keyboard.
WASD, you probably do it based on your camera vector instead.
Yeah.
There you go. Decisions made right here.
Done.
I figured at some point we'd want to support everything, right? It's just the priority right now. Like, just keep going with the motion controllers.
Yep,
it's really compelling.
And another question too, but I assume that it's same kind of specs as you would run with a VR editing machine, right? Like you're not.
Yeah, the machine we were demoing on is my office computer. It's nothing special. So yeah, it's a 980. Yeah, but I had a 970 before that, and it was still fine.
VR requires monster machines anyway, so it requires a fast machine, but so does.
This doesn't add any new like resource strain.
There's a little bit of overhead involved in having the editor up.
The editor has its own kind of a few little things, like the way we draw we'll work on them over time, right? But like the selection outline has a special post process that didn't care about performance when we wrote it. So there's some optimization to be done. But so it's not quite as fast as play in VR. And your performance is going to vary depending on what's in your scene, of course, too. So
cool. Let's see.
Any more questions?
Yeah, just a couple more we can do.
Yeah.
Chaperone work in editor. Is there anything specific for Chaperone?
No, it works.
Works fine. Yeah, it's great. You need it actually.
The advantage of that is that it works on the compositor level. So like once our system's done with it, it passes it off to the Valve stuff, and they do their little chaperone, and then it comes to the device.
All good.
So we don't even have to interface with it in that regard.
So FPS tolerance is an editor. It's going to be the same as developing for VR, correct?
Yeah. We have plans for trying to make that better.
Yep.
The time warpy stuff should help a lot with that.
As far as tech in general, though, it's probably a good blanket statement or a good guesstimate. So whatever you would develop for VR, expect this similar for editing in VR, right? Like frame rate's going to be similar. Your tech specs are going to be about similar for your actual equipment.
Yeah.
So
there's nothing drastically different going on.
Yeah. Cool. A couple of these are actually dupes. Let's see if we can get one more in here. This one's probably one of those future features, but like, how do you input a value on your little palette as opposed to scrubbing?
It's not working in this version, but we have some pretty interesting. Yeah, we've done a prototype and we have some interesting ideas about how to tackle it. This wasn't the first thing on the priority stack, but we'll definitely support it. I think we have some cool ideas for it. I mean, I think something along the lines of the Steam controller kind of that kind of input device is pretty cool. It's compelling, but something like that might work.
Cool.
And that's a tricky one, right? That's one that might not be solved for a long time perfectly.
This is one of those come back to the questions, where's the value?
Yep.
When it comes to building blueprints and typing things, I mean, we're definitely going to come up with solutions for, hey, there's a couple of inputs that need to happen here. Yep. But if you're doing something that requires or that has an advantage for you being in VR, what we found so far is that large scale data input doesn't really overlap a lot with that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not something that you need a obscenely robust system for.
We'll absolutely get it working, right?
Yeah.
But
to change values on a light, to move this around.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, we're not trying to, we're keeping it real, right? We don't expect someone to show up for work and put the hat on and just stay there all day. Just stay in VR the whole day. I mean, maybe, I think there's a future there somewhere.
Yeah.
But the hardware's not there yet.
We're
still learning.
Prioritizing by the most immediate value that we can.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. Where VR editing makes sense, and then how you kind of support those features as they go wide,
Exactly.
right? And things that would be like typing in localization strings and localization
Exactly.
missions.
Why on earth would you be in VR for
Yeah,
that?
exactly.
This is going to help VR developers right away because they can pop into VR. They can not only inspect the editor world, which they could never do before. They had to go into the game world. They can inspect the editor world, and then they can click on stuff now, and they can make tweaks. They can open things. They can place new things. It's great for people laying out lights and props. Yeah, it's immediately useful for that. Yeah. And I think we showed that navigation is fun and fast and efficient. Especially people pick it up really quickly, but once you get good with it, we kind of slow it down here so that we're not it's just not spastic. Right. But you can move around fast. It's really cool.
Yeah, watching Nick work beforehand, it was just like, oh, and there's the new gazebo. Just wasn't there when I walked to get some water.
Yeah. So I think Nick put it well. It's finding the right, focusing on the valuable parts. Cool. You can't see the chat this screen.
Yeah, I know. We had to move the monitor so we don't. The whole room has changed. They normally have the TVs in front of us, but then we couldn't see Nick, and we wanted to look at you while you were walking around in a headset. So good.
Cool.
All right. Well, cool. So, any closing thoughts? Any last minute things?
I'm super excited that we finally get to show this. I've been wanting to put this together. We've been working on it a long time and thinking about it a long time, and I think it's an awesome beginning to something we work with. The community of UE4 developers and also the whole kind of VR development world, right? Because we've learned a ton of stuff from existing projects, and we hope we'll teach people some things, and we're all going to come up learning the best kind of ways to use motion controls and
the language for working with motion controls.
Yeah, it's a big frontier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so
great.
But it's really exciting to get it up there.
Cool. Yeah, well, that's awesome. I can't wait to watch it evolve and grow over time. It's going to be a lot of fun. So for those who may have missed it, came in a little later, we plan on giving more information out at GDC on March 16th, so stay tuned for that. If you got questions about it, you can drop it into the thread, and we'll kind of follow up as we can there, but stay tuned for more information. Reminders that this is going to go full source to everybody as well, so we invite the community to come, work with us on this. Tell us what you need in it. We live on your feedback in so many different ways. So thanks, Tim. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Nick. Shelly, you're the best. We will see you again next week, Thursday at 2:00. Take care, everyone.